Hi guys, I have Swayam with me today from Sora Chain AI. I want to talk to him today about decentralized small language models. Actually, I want to talk to you about small language models, and then, of course, you're doing a much differentiated work on the decentralization part. So I thought it would be a very interesting chat. A lot of people still don't even know about small language models, right? Like the LLMs is the buzzword. And so I thought it would be very interesting to take your perspective on it.
Yeah.
So there's Web3, that was a wave, and
Mhm,
then now AI, which also people call a wave.
mhm.
What got you to kind of tie them together?
Yeah, good question, right? So I've been mainly coming from Web3 background. I spent almost a decade in Web3. I got started back in 2016 and almost done 10 years in just Web3, building
Mm.
ecosystems, protocol design, and crypto economics. So at the very core of blockchain or in Web3 is something that is very powerful is traceability and provenance. So if you say ChatGPT or Anthropic like systems are black box, how do you make it more verifiable? And that's where a very big part of provenance, which is the core aspects of blockchain, solves the problem for AI. I did this blog maybe a year back or so, and which just talks about the intersection of Web3 and AI. And like I did this matrix in which if you overlap the parameters of or the properties of decentralized AI and overlap with blockchain trilemma, there is a core distinction that comes out, like where exactly this intersection makes sense. And this is exactly where we are building on what we are doing. So with blockchain on Sora chain, what we are just solving is trustless part in which one node does not have to trust another node and they can still collaborate together to train the same model trustlessly. So there are different ways. So verification is very important in general. Like if you, especially in sensitive domains, so if let's say if you upload your X-ray and if I upload my X-ray and the interpretation that we get from the AI or LLMs needs to be deterministic. But at the very core, LLMs or models are non-deterministic. Like how do you get to a stage where you know where or what data it is using to get you to the answers? And
Mm.
is it the same for you and same for me? Like that needs to be broken down. And that blockchain plays a very good role in there because it does the same thing, which is having the ledger and the records of all different things. And you can go in the time back and always look for it. So it's always there. It's you cannot mess with it.
Yeah, I was right before this video chat. I had another video chat yesterday. It was a partner at a legal firm, and they handle a lot of tech companies with algorithm and IP. And he said the same thing. Someone needs to solve for traceability. Otherwise, when the court asks me to do an audit, I can't do an audit on a black box technically.
Yeah, exactly. Like there is no way to know what is happening on the back end because
Got
we
it.
don't have those systems. In open source, it still makes it better, but at the very core, how LLMs work, it is random. At the very core, it is random.
Yeah, but what was the motivation? Is it privacy? Is it you knew regulations gonna come? What got you to explore this?
So at the very core, like if you just take how AI training works, you collect the data, you aggregate it, you clean it, and give it to the model for the training. The problem is aggregation. You cannot really aggregate the data, especially in sensitive domains. So this could be private data, your or my data, or it could be healthcare, life science, defense, or all different sectors, or even governments, and also enterprises because of competitive advantage. They don't want to share away the data is a big problem. And let's take a scenario like if Stanford wants to train a model on cancer research, and it can do like the data it has perhaps from the same demographic or the same geography where Stanford is, it can train its own model. Let's say in India, IIT can do the same. IIT Madras, let's say, trains its own model on that. But there is no perhaps a way for them to work together and enlarge the database to work on the same model because they cannot share the data due to all data regulations. And you don't really want them to share the data because it could be genomics or very, very important data as a nation. And data sovereignty is the most important thing that everyone is pushing for because you
Hmm.
don't want your data or compute to be outside your land.
Hmm.
And how do you solve that? And that's one of the way to do it is federated learning. Like you bring models to the data rather than data to the model.
Got it. Yeah, let's come to that. So let's unpack federated learning for people. Like, what is it?
Yeah. So I think before that, there's one more question. Like, where does today's data come from? So there are three big buckets, right? The first is public data, which is almost expected to be exhausted by end of next year.
Hmm.
The second bucket is synthetic data. You can create based on the models, you can create the data, but it is only as good as the base model. It is garbage in, garbage out. And you cannot really use that in, again, sensitive domains because there is no determinism of using that. And the third bucket is private data, which is, let's say, logged into your device, my device, but it could be enterprises, governments, hospitals, or research labs. Like, how do you unlock that? And if we take the biggest open source model right now, Llama 4 was trained on roughly 33 trillion tokens. And if we take the comparison with all this available private data, that amounts to almost 60 times more than that. So this data is still remained which is untouched from the training of AI. And that's where federated learning gets interesting. Like, how do we get this data? So, federated learning is very simple. You bring model to the data. That's it. Rather than data going to the model, which is like you upload on the cloud and then there is everything happening on the cloud, you just bring your model to the data. The data stays where it is. The training happens at the source.
Yeah, which I've understood. Since it's a
Yeah.
phone, this is my information.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
run you run your model on my information, but my
Yeah.
information never leaves the phone.
Exactly. So the model actually becomes your model. Like it is Kalyani's model. It's a small model running on your device. It is for you. Now that model is learning everything about you at your local context, and my model learns about me. What we are doing as a network is we are orchestrating that training. Like my model learns from your model and other way around, and all the peers in the network
Yeah,
without
that's the part I have my question around. How do you do that without my data being leaked or, like without this being exchanged? How do you pass that learning to each other? Is what I'm asking.
Yeah, it's a forward passing, right? So it's just a method of how the training works, or it's a pipeline. So essentially, federated learning is a very old concept. It was built in 2016 by Google. So if you ever use Gboard, Google Keyboard, or even Siri on Apple, they both have some aspects of federated learning into it. So what really happens is the data stays where it is. The training happens locally. The model only shares weights and gradients updated to the global model. So your raw data is never shared, the weights and gradients are shared. And because on what we are doing is a decentralized network, your device is anonymized or pseudo anonymized. Like it you cannot come back and say that this data belongs to you. It's always random. So you cannot, even if you do it, but usually with federated learning, you use a differential privacy. So you add noise to weights and gradients, which is shared to the global model. So it's usually difficult to come back to the raw data. But there is still a problem of data memorization, that it starts remembering the data. But there are different ways on how to optimize that. There is no concrete solution yet, but the data memorization is still a problem.
And what about the feedback loop? So let's say this is my information, the model learns from it. The model's kind of spoken to few other people on their information, whatever the way you explain. But does it train itself when it's in my device? Could
Yeah.
it retrain itself, or there is new cost needed every time to retrain it? Is what I'm trying to understand.
Not okay. So what we do is we take the small model, you run it on your device for your own data. Your own data is too small. Like all day in, day out, you're not really generating a lot of data. It's just different data points rather than the volume of data. So what
Hmm.
we do is we use LoRa, low rank adapters to train the model, which is roughly maybe in a day, it's maximum 100 MB of update. And you share that to the global model. So let's say if when you are sleeping and your phone isn't charging, your phone just updates the global model or sends out the update. So it is not really consuming your bandwidth or your battery time, but it keeps updated. So we sync the state with the global model. So my model is also learning from the global model and matching the state, and same for you. It could be async on when the update happens. And this is where we are still optimizing on how exactly and when the update happens.
Is there a prisoner's dilemma involved there? Like, why would hospital A already agree? Like, there are two things: the catch 22 situation, also the chicken and egg thing, also, and at the same time the prisoner's dilemma. Also, like, how do you deal with these internal dilemmas for people when they agree to a model like yours?
So usually, so right now the moat is data. So for example, let's take a scenario of Swift, which is the global payment railway, and they move day in, day out, like that's a huge volume of fiat currency that they move day in, day out. And still their own data is not enough to build a good, robust fraud detection model. And now they are going towards the route of using federated learning, and they're inviting other banks to participate in the network. Why? Because the I think the core aspect is the need for data diversity and how to get the underrepresented data into the training. Like these are the two core aspects on how to make your model better. Like everyone feels or each enterprise feels that data is enough, but actually it's not. It's never going to be enough. What you really need is patterns or more patterns in the data set such that the models could learn from it and could help in optimizing. You cannot or you don't really want to share the raw data because of competitive advantage or all different compliances, but you do want to collaborate on the intelligence because it is like the pie is getting bigger for everyone on what it solves.
Okay, fair. You're saying everyone benefits if everyone
Yeah,
cooperates. Kind of
yeah,
situation.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Got it.
And the
You
Swift, so Swift is a live example. They're already doing this. Another big example is Illy, which is a drug discovery company, which is huge in diabetes and GLP drugs. They created this platform called Tune Labs, and they've invited, I think they are doing roughly 15 or 20 models, and they're inviting different labs to collaborate and contribute to their models, which is huge for drug discovery. This is still limited to just US based entities because they cannot do cross borders.
Yet they're all decentralized. You're saying the model is still decentralized?
So it is currently managed on cloud, like they have a cloud infra which is managing that. The problem with that part is like you cannot do cross borders. Like you cannot, let's say, have an entity in Japan collaborate with entity in US because there is no way to come make sure that it is compliant and data is not moving either way. Like Japan is concerned, US is concerned, and you don't really want Japan to manage the infrastructure for US, and US don't want Japan to manage the infrastructure for them. So there is this trust problem. And this is exactly what we are solving, and we are making it trustless. Like you don't have to trust anyone in the network.
Got it. The follow-up question on this is, do you think there could be a problem of leverage when United Nations as a body got formed, right? Some countries obviously had more power, some had less, so like less vote in the system. If there is a big pharma company like that, it can still call the shots on a lot of things, right? Like that. It does have leverage and it will bring more data, right? So it may I'm just trying to
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. So it depends. So like at the very core, even let's say Tune Labs or as a platform, they cover the US based domain. What they really want is to capture the data from outside the US to get into more data sets. Like how do they do it? They perhaps don't know. There is no infrastructure out there that could support it as of now. Another part is like they can have a local operations in Japan or in other countries where they can do a similar kind of approach, but then it is a silo. Like US data is not talking to Japan's data. It is still a big silos. Like how do you bridge that gap? Yeah, there is no infrastructure to do that yet. And
And
even if the yeah, go.
no, go ahead, finish your point.
So for your question, like how UN or if there is a dominance, like the core here, the moat is data. Like everyone wants a good data and they will try to open up or build the infrastructure for that. The data is getting the bottleneck here, how to get the good data. And now if let's say other countries come up with another structure or let's say builds or joins a trustless network to train, would it be bigger or better than what Illy is doing? Maybe in terms of quality of data and the volume of data that it brings in.
Yeah, no, I've heard you. This point, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm saying, let's say I, as a big entity, bring 1 trillion point data points. Example.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the smaller place getting 100 billion points. Example.
Yeah.
I'll at some point 10 billion. Let's say it's a very small 10 billion.
Yeah.
Points.
Yeah.
The guy at 10 billion is still getting advantage of a 1 trillion, right? Technically.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. Okay. There is no direct correlation that we have found in amount of quantity of data you have and the quality data you have.
this
So
answer.
there is no direct correlation there. So maybe let's say if the 1 trillion data points that let's say a big pharma company has, it might actually be looking for that 100 billion parameter thing or data points because it is not captured in their database. Like it is more valuable for them to get that underrepresented data. And for that 100, it is more important to get the exposure to the trillion thing. So yeah, yeah. Yeah, so there is no direct correlation, and it's actually the core crux here is the access to high quality data, which is inaccessible or hard to access.
Yeah, I think this year 2025 was more about like internet and Reddit and common crawl, but I think what you've said, we are going to exhaust that data at some point.
Yeah, and that is all public data, which is all text based. Like it is just text. It's just words for LLMs, right? Like that's what they want, but it is not really capturing, let's say, X-rays or research-based data or data which is captured in a lab somewhere, which is not captured in this entire crowd.
Fair. Is this still theory or you've started like as a
We're
company?
already having couple of pilots that we are doing at this stage. So first, like what we are exactly trying to scale and prove is the trustless coordination that it works with multiple peer network. So that's what we are testing right now.
And how do you like, or is there still already a problem of model drift? Because now there is a latency issue also. Sometimes 30% of the models are asleep. Giving a hypothetical example.
Yeah, so the latency problem is when you do a like synchronization in the real time. So let's say you are doing your model, I'm doing my model, and if we are updating the global model in the same time. There is problem with the latency there and how you manage the state. There are more problems to optimize there. But if you do it async, like if you are updating once a day, regardless, and then you are trying to match the state, it's still doable. And we are testing the scale on how many nodes we can do this at this stage. But so far, we are very confident we can easily scale up to 100 or 200 nodes for sure. So that is huge than what this consortiums look like today. So if you take Swift, maybe there are 15, 20 banks doing it, at least 20, 30 institutions participating in the entire network. So it's too small. Like they cannot, as soon as they think of going from 30 nodes to let's say 300, trust does not scale.
And just coming back to model drift and hallucination, do all these problems exist in your environment as well?
Yeah. So hallucination is mainly because of not having proper good data in the training, right? And not having a proper optimization or benchmarking on what exactly you're optimizing for. So let's say if you're optimizing for X, but if you don't have enough data for the X, there is going to be hallucination in the model. And that's what we are, at least my hypothesis is if we have enough access to high quality, good data, which is coming in, you can actually model or go or tweak the model to go towards the benchmarks and perform well and have the least hallucination possible, because then you exactly know what you're optimizing for and you have the data to optimize it for.
Got it. And besides pharma and financial services, which other sectors are kind of more leaning towards decentralized and the model that you have?
The biggest one is personalized learning, right? Like you training your own model, I train my model.
Yeah,
And
it's coming.
Yeah, it's personalized learning because a very simple example. So where are you based?
Bangalore.
Okay. So if you ask a very simple question on GPT, what should I do today in Bangalore? It does not really have that local context of where you are staying, who you are with, who do you hang out with, what's your other parts of your life look like, right? There is no context. There is no local context because it's not trained on that data. Very simple. What we are doing is we are bringing that small model to your device where you can train that locally on your own data. The best part, your inference is free because you're training your own model locally. So you don't have to pay for that inference because it's free. But what you get is a P2P learning because that network is also learning from my model and other 1,000 humans in the network.
Got it. What kind of infra though does it require? Like in terms of, I know now since you're saying it's on my device CPU, the usual hardware,
Yeah.
but does it still have any middleware infra that is required from your end to prepare?
Not really. So mainly the local training is your infra, like your compute. So it could be using small CPUs. And because it's just very small parameters, like at this stage, we are not even trying to overload it with a lot of different data points. We are just trying to stick to what we minimal can do on the smartphone device. But a good thing is there is a good hardware tailwinds, like the device in general are getting much better. And what you can do locally is getting way efficient than what it was last year. So that is also something that we are backing on, that hardware is getting better. So the models would be able to do much better at the local level. So this could, and this is not just limited to smartphones, right? It could be any hardware that is
Yeah.
capable to run a model. So think about robots or humanoids running the model and learning from each other. Another good example is swarm of drones. Let's say war-like situation, and there are drones. So each drone can learn from each other drones and
Right.
update itself. And this
Oh,
could be even airplanes. They can, every time they let's say are on the layovers and refueling, they update the local model. So they can do a self-diagnostic or any of the different tests. And this are already, like, the drones is already been tested by NATO. Like there's already a couple of case studies out there. Airplane one, there are a couple of research papers written already. So there are already few testing done over all this different concepts. But there is no scale. Like all this testing has been done on, let's say, 5, 10 drones.
hmm.
What we are looking at is a scale, like how to do it for 1,000 drones or let's say 1,000 airplanes together. And without one airline trusting the other airline. Without one airline trusting the other airline.
Yeah, that's the challenging part
Yeah,
because we're mentally trained as humans to see someone as competition. We don't want to reveal anything to them.
yeah, it's okay. It's okay not to reveal, right?
Yeah,
That is your
that
fundamental thing, that you want to have the privacy and competitive advantage. But at the very core, like if you can get safety out of it, and if you can have a diagnostic system in your airline, why not? Like it just pushes the entire industry forward.
What about these? I have two questions, but I'm detouring here. What about these AI companion apps like health and probably even astrology and all of these sectors where it's a personal, but also they're leveraging LLMs with like doing contextual learning plus.
But again, it's not getting the real local context, right? Like
That's what I'm
what
saying. So here also you're saying the use case, this is a better model to implement as a use case, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, like, what we need is a different infra to do those use cases. Like with LLMs, it's just limited because you don't have access to the base model. You're not really retraining it. You are just giving or doing a RAG or just doing MCPs and giving different data points and then just using it. So, giving access to the model is just data retrieval. It's not, the model is not getting intelligent about it. It's not learning from that data. You are just retrieving that data.
If it sits on my phone, does it also access my social media data?
Yeah. So the goal is like you provide access to the data. So you are not really uploading the data to the cloud. You are just locally giving it the access to it. So if you go to Instagram, there's an option to download a zip file of your entire data on
Mm.
Instagram. And that file goes to the local model. So that's the goal. And that stays local. It's not shared anywhere on the cloud or pushed anywhere.
But would people take the effort because this is friction, right?
Yeah, so it depends on how we do the UX. It needs to be done well. So it's usually easy. Like if you go towards OAuth or have an access to Instagram through OAuth, you're already getting the permission to give the access. So like it's all about UX, how we make it better.
Got it. Got it. One thing about the techniques. So, do you still train, considering you have such novel way of doing it? I'm asking this question. Is distillation still your technique for?
Yeah, so distillation is actually very important, especially when we are just getting started. So what we do is we pre-train some model and then distill it on let's say smartphones, and then we start the training. Because like just starting from very scratch, it would be very intensive, and we don't know what we're optimizing for. So even with 30% loss or let's say 30% accuracy, we can just distill the models to start with. So that is a good way to for us to bootstrap the network, at least initially.
Okay, got it. What are the risks here? We know like the good stuff, right? Like why it would
Yeah,
work, the
yeah.
promise, and everything. What is the biggest risk here?
The biggest risk is just ensuring the trustlessness part works. So you don't have to trust me, and I don't have to trust you. And another thing is data memorization. Like if the model starts remembering about you, and if it starts, let's say, updating the global model, it might be a security risk. So these two problems are the major ones. The trustlessness is not, I would say, not solvable, because like if you see how Bitcoin works or how Ethereum works, it's the same concept. Nothing changes. Like in Ethereum, you can be anywhere in the world and you can start up a node and join the network.
Mm.
But the rest of the network doesn't have to trust you, and you don't have to trust the rest of the network. So that's the same concept. But yeah, there are a lot of caveats in how you design that, how you do the cryptoeconomics, and it's a spectrum of decentralization on
But the
how you.
stakes are also really high compared to like a Bitcoin.
Yes, and that's the reason we are starting small. And we are not really directly going for big cases. And still, at our own experimentation level, we are still using cloud infra for the simulation and stuff. So we are making sure that we are not leaking data or anything. So we are taking our own steps to make sure that this is, yeah, we are not rushing into it.
Got it. This part is purely geographical, but since you're based in Amsterdam, do you feel like it would have been better if you were in SF and doing the same thing?
Yes, in a way, especially access to capital and talent. But in terms of the entire narrative for privacy and privacy first systems, I think Europe is amazing with GDPR and all different EU AI Act. It's not the best probably for the innovation in general, because it limits the access to the data or how it is accessing the data, as if just it's a different way to do the stuff. But as if I think it's just the pool of talent and capital that makes it much faster to execute.
Yeah, I also think it's about the energy, like the
Yeah.
36 hours of the 24 hours kind of mentality also.
Yeah, but I think I strongly feel that there's a marathon and not a sprint. It's a long game, and we are just getting started. Like LLMs are probably just not, they are not really even solving good problems. They're just barely scratching the surface, because it's just like at the very core, it's just predicting the next word, right? Like reasoning is just a way to say that it's doing a lot of stuff, but it's not. Like
Yeah,
it's
what do you
like,
think about LLMs being dead end as a theory? That it's not even a theory, but there
I
are
won't say
limits.
it's a I won't say it's a dead end, but at the very core, like it really does not capture space and time. Like it's not spatio-temporal models, right? Like it really does not understand the environment where you are. Like there is no space in the model to understand that.
Mm.
It's just words. Any words or anything that is written in the world, maybe it understands, but there is no context to it. The words without context is
Meaningless.
it's garbage. So it's just like LLMs are good first step, I would say, in the entire journey that we have. And we have some good toolings now. But I think we are way far from having a good holistic systems that can actually be beneficial.
Yeah, I think even agentic AI right now is caught up and stuff, but I also don't think that's also the solution. That's doing good work at automation, but that's not real intelligence at some.
Yeah, I mean, automation is, I don't know if you know, there used to be this IFTTT, if this, then this. And
Yeah.
this used to exist like, I don't know, almost 20 years back since Android started. It's just that with some LLM or AI components, right? In which you can just integrate your workflows with LLMs or use AI to make it better.
No, but the only difference, yeah, you're right, it's workflow, if this, then that, but the non-deterministic part. That's the only new part element here. Otherwise, it's the same old
Yeah.
book, right?
Yeah, I mean, non-determinism is also, you're still giving it a proper instruction or writing a prompt in the workflow, right? What exactly you want in the workflow. So
They're putting evals to make it deterministic. So then I'm saying it's coming to the same thing, right? The magic of agentic AI was the non-determinism part. But because
yeah,
everyone's too scared on what the AI will do, they're putting all these guardrails and evals, and then it's become if this, then that.
yeah, in enterprise setting, yes, because they want to make it more predictable and safe. Yeah.
What about the competition? Because all the Google and the OpenAIs of the world obviously want the centralized cloud. It took so long for people to get convinced on
Mhm.
cloud, first of all.
Yeah.
So, like, do you see this as a big deterrence? All the big ones wanting.
I see as a more complementary tech stack, because we are not directly competing with GPT or Anthropic. Like we cannot. Like it's a very different infrastructure play, and what they are having and doing is on a different scale. What we are doing is going for local, which they cannot with the current infra. Like Google's complete revenue, or most of the revenue is coming from their cloud business. And what we are going is completely opposite that. So Google is the one who actually came with FL in first place
Yeah.
with federated learning, right? So like I'm very sure they will do it in some or other way, but it really goes in the opposite direction of their business model. So, and most of the federated learning stuff is open source. Like there is no value capture at the infrastructure level because it's completely open source.
Yeah, I was saying just from the point of view that if my sales pitch were to involve privacy, these guys would very easily go and say use the sandbox approach. It's not foolproof. I know the sandbox also is as private as they just say it to be. But I'm still saying they could take the key points of what is your moat and kind of go out and say, okay, we're going to provide that. Right now, everyone's fighting for the pie, right? So I'm just trying to understand if this is a real threat.
Not really. So what Apple is doing right now is they have some aspects of federated learning in their design and their Apple Intelligence Stack. So what they are using is called a private cloud. Like they carve out a small cloud piece, and that's where your data goes, and that's where it processes. Now you don't really know that's private. Like there is no way for you to verify that is private. So even if they can sell the narrative, are you as a user comfortable doing that? Most of the population goes for the convenience over privacy, which is great. But at the very core, like we all feel bad, right? Like when we think AI training, we feel like all our data was used to make this and we are at the receiving end. At the very core of what we are doing is we just want to flip this narrative and we really want to embrace the AI training. Like I personally feel like this is the most amazing epitome of what humanity could achieve to train something together. And if you are part of it, you should feel proud about it. Like you are contributing to an intelligence which is much bigger than who you are. And it's just a change in narrative, which is required, in my opinion, which is not really, I don't think that's attainable through what these big techs are doing.
Got it. Yeah, fair. Especially to the spaces we discussed, like pharma, healthcare. It's like leap of complete
Yeah.
shift to the way we do
Yeah.
it. Like, are you guys funded?
We are closing the round soon. So we are almost in the process.
Got it. Yeah, because the next bit was the cost of compute infra. How expensive is it to do all of this?
So because we are using your local compute, right? Like we are not building the compute network. What we are doing is we are building a coordination and orchestration framework. Like you are still using your own compute. So if you are a pharma company, I'm assuming you have let's say 3 GPUs at your source, and that's what you are training locally with. So we are not. That's not on our overhead.
Sources.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, last question, since I know I have only taken 40 minutes of your time. What is currently impossible with centralized AI, even if all these hospitals agree to give the data? That decentralized federated learning can solve.
So what was the question again?
So what is possible? Even so, okay, case one is you're saying all these hospitals don't want to give that data, right, to a big company, hypothetically, or don't want each other to have that data. I'm saying even if someone were to come and say, we'll give you a very private access and give us all your data, if the hospitals agree to give data, I'm saying what is the other impossible thing that centralized AI cannot solve, that decentralized AI and federated learning can solve?
Verifiability. Like just as what kind of data was used to get to a output and the steps in the intermediate, you cannot do it otherwise. Like
So
you need,
traceability and interpretability.
yeah, exactly. Because like
yours.
yeah, exactly. So traceability, verifiability are the crux of having blockchain as a part of AI stack. Like you can go back and verify where the results are coming from, and this could be very critical in sensitive domains.
Got it. Okay, this was very helpful because so far I only knew about LLMs and SLMs.
Mhm.
But like when I was researching for your, this video chat, I learned like so many new things that I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, there are different ways to do the stuff. This is not the most efficient way to do it, and that's the reason it has not been done before. But because the hardware is getting better, we're already running out of the data, and we are looking forward to solve some really good problems. Because where I got my confidence is from if Swift itself moving 7.5 trillion day in, day out, wants to do this part of federated learning network, it's a no-brainer that you need this. Like if their data is not covering all underrepresented data, how is your organization covering it? It's not.
Yeah. My biggest
Like
take up more so was like healthcare, defense, everything was predictable, but the personal learning part made like it made a cube light go on in my head that yeah, of course, like it will
that's the
go.
biggest.
Yeah.
That's the biggest.
Okay, I'll go to
Because healthcare, I'm personally like very inclined towards life science and healthcare, like because I feel like there is real problems to be solved there with this infra. But like what you can actually get out of this is personalized learning.
yeah.
At the very core, your own co-pilot running at your own device, which could actually be predictive. Like it could think ahead in the time and give you the recommendation, which is not currently possible with the current systems.
Will you ever see yourself, or is anyone already narrowing down on the personalized learning using edge case, like edge AI models and stuff like that?
We are doing that, right? Like we are.
Okay. I thought you like more across the spectrum, like pharma, healthcare. Everything. I'm
So
saying someone specifically just that as a company.
yeah, so at the very core, we are agnostic at the infrastructure level. Like we can support any of the use cases. The first one that we are doing the pilot for is personalized because it's much more
Right.
easy for us to do the GTM and to just experiment there. And it's a low stakes, like healthcare science is high stake. And we already have a pilot for confirm for life science where we are going to experiment and see where we are.
So if Sora is like if it's successful, right? Help me visualize, or if decentralized federated learning takes off. Let's say Google's also done it. We are in 2030. What does the world really look like? Everyone's phone is basically AI now.
So everyone's phone is already gonna be AI, right? Like you're already using GPT or something on your devices. But if federated learning really works out, I think a much better way to think about this is think all enterprises are building these LLMs to get to you, to get your data or get your access. But now on your device, you have your own LLM or your own model, which is trying to protect you, which basically is a layer on top of you. So let's say if there is a scam call or if there's a malicious link on your device or someone is trying to get access to you, like that model works for you. Like if like it's LLM to LLM fight or a model to model thing, right? Like a model tries to identify that. And it's not even a fight, like essentially it would work together. So let's say the local model and the GPT or Anthropic, the APIs would go into a different application layer and work together because GPT solves a very specific problem, which is generalized intelligence. Like the text problem, all the different knowledge on the internet is through them, but it does not have local. Local comes through the local model.
Is there I heard you, is there a innovation waiting after the transformer? Like I told you about liquid AI, right? They're trying to solve for some of the
Yeah, so
applications.
Liquid AI is really good. We actually experimented with Liquid AI because it is really efficient, especially the LFM, the second version that they launched, and we did it on the mobile device itself. So it was working well. We did a lot of experimentation there. It is great. I mean, the size of the model and what you can make it run on the local device or on edge device, it's something that is very required, but it cannot do everything like reasoning or deep research. It cannot do that, right? Like you still need to couple it with GPT or Anthropic like systems to get most out of the entire range of the solutions.
What is the part it was good at when you were experimenting with it?
It was fast, especially on inference. Like so we did this experiment of Instagram captions. Like we got Instagram files, like the zip file that I mentioned to you, and trained a small local model. And the inference part was like, let's say as an influencer, if you are, let's say want to post something, let's say give a 3 second live video feed and it learns from the environment of where you are and then it recommends you the caption based on your tone and what you usually write on your profile. So that's what we built as a first level of experimentation on how we can do that. And it was fast. The Liquid AI was fast and it was able to do this live video interpretation really well, which was powerful because usually it requires high bandwidth. It did it well.
I thought their like promise was memory, which is why I was trying to ask you. I mean, great that they're very fast, but I thought they promised that if we are able to solve this architecture problem, the current way of doing memory is broken, right? So they will try
Yeah.
to solve it.
Yeah, I think we are not touched the memory yet because we are still playing more around small data points. Because we cannot train heavy things on the local on your phones at this stage. So we are still playing around with the small problems or smaller data points. Yeah, so far memory has not been a constraint for us.
Got it. I think I think the way we'll move is, of course, we're in LLM phase right now, but there will come a phase where it'll be in a hybrid approach, whether it be SLM for some task, LLM like
Yeah,
towards
yeah, for sure.
then we go probably towards like a more general kind of interaction across the spectrum by
Yeah, I
20.
think we are still missing a spatial temporal models, right? Like something that understands 3D world or which understands physics well. There are a few labs which are doing that currently, but this spatial temporal is very important aspects of how you interpret the real world around you. So I think we are still way, yeah, we are far from that point where you can actually understand from your live world. And that's the reason smart glasses are something really good form factor, where they can capture the real world and give you more local context.
Yeah, I actually spoke to the founder of Super, which launched Super Glass in the Silicon Valley and
Mhm.
Seattle. But they did it for a very specific use cases. So they have this staffing and field service agents for
Mhm.
roofing and contractors and all. Considering they were not entering actual homes, which means there was no privacy concern, they were
Mhm.
able to very quickly get the adoption up, and they already had apps which had vision and audio and all of that. So like Glass was just a packaging that then made everything very easy.
Glass is just an interface, right? Like still your computing device is your smartphone. And one of the project that I spoke to recently, they are still using cloud to do most of the stuff. So like, yeah, it's still not there yet.
I think the marketing towards cloud was so strong in last 10, 15 years. It's going to take people to realize that there are other better ways to do it. I think only
Yeah, I
that
mean,
guy at
cloud
37 Signal, he went off cloud. He's like, screw it, I'll do it on my own.
Yeah, but cloud, even for us, like cloud is a great platform for us to test things out. But as a startup, one of the challenge has been to get the compute access, right? Like how do you get GPUs? And usually you don't get GPUs because it's really expensive. And we got some startup credits and stuff for the compute stuff, but still it's not the most accessible thing, especially GPUs, good GPUs.
Fair. Same problem with Indian startups also struggle
Yeah.
to, because it's also very resource intensive and all.
Yeah, exactly. So I think at the very core, it should not be like this because all devices in general can support GPUs. It can run a smaller task, cannot run a big models like 20 billion parameters or something or more than that. But it could still do a lot of stuff locally. And that's what we are trying to go towards. Like if you can start doing things locally, you can still optimize a lot. And there's also more geopolitical compute optimization where let's say US probably holds control over 75% of compute. China is around 15 and rest of the world is around 10%, right? So if tomorrow, let's say Azure or any of these cloud platforms, because of US thing, they say you cannot really use the resources from US domain, there is no access. Like you are completely wiped out from most of the GPUs and the access that is in the world. Like what will you do? And most of the countries don't have the resolution to that. They don't have investment, no infrastructure to do any of the AI. So would other countries, smaller country, not be intelligent? Like they won't get the access to be intelligent.
Fair. Okay, the next one is a bit dumb question, but I'll still ask you. Does the people who are giving you data for the personal learning or whatever you are using, do they get paid? Is there pricing model to it?
Yeah. So I'll just correct the question. They don't give us the data? The data
Alpha.
stays where it is. We are not. No one is. They are not giving data to anyone. The data stays where it is. It is at the premise. The training happens at the premise. Yes. On the incentivization part, we have a model to incentivize on the based on pro rata basis how much your data made the global model better. So let's say if you are training your model locally, if I'm training my model locally, my end of the day training, let's say, updated the global model by 2%. Your model updated it by 5%. That pro rata update or the improvement to the global model incentivizes you from the network. That's why cryptoeconomics and blockchain makes it very interesting for us to how to control and nudge the system.
Yeah, okay. This helps because the problem or the biggest complaint I have with the centralized closed source models. They've been trained on all of our data, and yet like they're just assuming, okay, but you can use ChatGPT for free, but I don't use it, so then you still use my data and I've got zero compensation for it.
Yeah, exactly, right. So we all feel violated in a way that are all we are on the receiving end and the AI training. And this is exactly what we want to change the narrative. Like you should feel proud about using this and being part of that actively and contribute to the AI training.
Thank you, Swayam, so much for coming and taking the time. This is like a lot of fun.
Yeah, sure. So, likewise. This was a
Yeah,
good
in
conversation for me.
preparing for this chat also, I learned so much, right? Like that's actually what keeps me motivated to talk to people like you, and it's very inspiring. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it is quite important that we talk about all different approaches and how this could be made possible. We are doing one of those iteration, and there could be other projects which are having a different approach, but it's much more important to understand what this different approaches could look like. And we just don't have one solution, which are big techs.
Yeah, fair enough. On that note, thank you all for coming, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye.
Yeah. Thank you, Kalyani.